This is our second edition of Team Coaching Supervision Lab. My name is Agla Holton. I am team coaching practitioner like most of you, and I'll be hosting the session today. This lab is our continuation of collaboration between Team Coaching Circle and Global Institute for Team Coaching Supervision, as we are exploring and deepen the team coaching practice. And over past months, many of you told us that this Team Coaching Circle offers the opportunity for inspiration, connection, and shared learning, but you also were craving a little bit more reflective space. So these supervision labs were created exactly with this purpose. This is the dedicated environment where we can pause, where we can make sense of our experience, and also receive the support in the complexity and nuance of working with teams. To guide us in this reflective space, I'm very much delighted to be joined once again by two highly experienced team coaching supervisors. So you can see Dr. Liz Lewis on the screen. Hi, Liz. So just very quickly, by the way of introduction, Liz is a co-founder of Global Institute for Team Coaching Supervision and a director of Blue Sky International. She brings decades of experience as a coach, as a mentor, and award-winning supervisor. So welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Good to be here, Egle. And good to see you all, be with you today.
Lovely. Thank you, Liz, for joining. And I'm equally pleased to introduce Craig McKinsey. Hi, Craig. Hello.
Greeting.
Yeah, so Craig is Director of Academy of Transcend International, also a co-founder of Global Institute for Team Coaching Supervision and core faculty with Clutterbuck Coaching and Mentoring International. So before I hand over to our supervisors, let me very briefly revisit the arc of this year's Team Coaching Supervision Lab series. So we are hosting those 3 pilot sessions. Each of these focus on different stage of team coaching process. In our first lab, around a month ago, we looked at the beginnings, how we set the foundations for an effective partnership, how we assess readiness of the team, how we engage stakeholders early, how do we contract so that we anchor on the value and clarity of team coaching engagement. Today's session will bring us to the heart of the work, into that middle phase. And our focus today will be on use of self in team coaching, how we show up as team coaches, how we stay grounded, how do we set boundaries, observe our own biases, and use our presence in the process of working with teams. And our final session, which will be held on 12th of December, will shift our attention towards the endings. How we evaluate the impact, how do we design for closure, completion of the work. So the structure, in a way, allows us to walk through entire arc of team coaching engagement and explore the challenges and choice points of our work, which are emerging at each of those stages. So with that, I'm very much delighted to hand over to Liz and Craig, who will lead us throughout the second Team Coaching Supervision Lab. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you, Egle.
Thank you very much, Egle, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're absolutely delighted to be here and really excited about this collaboration. But part of our passion in finding the Global Institute for Team Coaching Supervision is to support people that want to deepen their work through reflective practice. So we're just so happy that we have this opportunity. Today's topic is in the conversation of the team coach. So we really want you to put yourself in the room, in the midst of the action, when the team is doing things, when you're doing things, when you're right in the midst of the conversation. And we're going to explore the idea of how we use ourselves, use of self in the team coaching context. And Lisa and I just completed our team coaching supervision training program that we did, and we had the last session just earlier this week, and they did a capstone kind of presentation on how they evolved and how they changed, and the number of people that commented that there's 3 modules on this in the program, but that this was a massive area of impact for them, connecting to themselves understanding the value of using themselves and learning how to be much more skillful as a supervisor, but also as all of our supervisors were also team coaches in that context as well. So this is a really significant and key aspect of highly skilled coaches, supervisors, and team coach. So we're delighted to be able to connect you to it. And in the title below there, that's why I'm not just, boring you with one slide, but it says a way of being as a team coaching resource. And that is absolutely key for you to understand that use of self flows from a way of being. And a lot of what we're going to share with you today will help you move in that way. We're going to share a model. We're going to put you into breakouts and have you discuss, have you do a reflection, and then we'll have you discuss how you might apply this into your team coaching practice. And then we'll help to make sense of that together in the room. So with all of that said, here is a very simple but incredibly complicated reflection of our perspectives on use of self. So, Lise, love to have you begin the journey through this lovely model.
Thank you, Craig, for introducing us, and great to be with you all. And I can recognise a couple of, well, probably more than a couple of names that are joining us today. So big hello to you. Thank you for coming, and welcome everyone else, wherever you are in the world. We're really delighted to see you. And this framework, Craig mentioned, we cover it in 3 modules on the actual Team Coach Supervision Program, but we don't have that time today. So we're going to do a kind of whistle-stop tour through this cycle of use of self that culminates in our way of being. And just by way of introduction as well, the importance is increasingly coming to us as team coaches about who we are. We can look at thinking we need more models, we need more approaches, we need this, we need that, we're hungry for knowledge, and so it extends. But really, the more that we're moving on in the coaching world, and particularly the team coaching world, the more important it is that we understand who we are. We put our focus on the team and the individuals in the team, but who are we in this? And how do we interact with the team as us? Not necessarily with our knowledge, of course that's important, and our expertise as team coaches, but what do we bring to the arena of team coaching? How well do we know ourselves? How well do we use the assets of being human being? So we want to just give you a really quick glimpse into this creation of use of self through going through each of these areas. As you can see in the entire wheel here of use of self, we're going to look at embodied values, mindset, self-intelligence, relational awareness, relational acuity, and systemic relational intelligence. So I'm hoping to give you some high-level introduction to what this is about. And to give you some idea of where we're coming from. Some of it will be very familiar to you, hopefully, as being human beings. You're bringing your humanness today. But also, we want you to really think about and feel, how can I engage myself more? We're already engaged, but how can I really make use of my resource that I have innately and that I've developed over time in my practice? So if we go on to our first slide and have a look at embodied values mindset, here I've just put the headings in here for embodied values mindset. There's a whole lot of information under each one of those, which we really don't have time to go into today. And these values here are just some that have been put together to give you an example of what an embodied values mindset might look like. So necessarily, as a practitioner, as a team coach, we will bring our compassion. I think we can readily say that there's compassion for ourselves, and there's compassion for the team members and the individuals in that team, including the team leader and everybody else that's involved. In terms of, it's not easy. We're teams working in a very messy world, so it's not easy to find our way through the best way to achieve what a team needs to achieve. And for us as team coaches, and hopefully we're able to work as co-coaches because that does really lighten the load, we're able to show some compassion and support the team through those difficult times by helping them find a way through. So there's that compassion. Clearly, we want to be curious. That helps us not make any judgments, doesn't it? And assumptions, just to hold on to our curiosity. And we need courage for sure. Sometimes it could be like walking into the lion's den, can't it? Because the team is kind of having a lot of difficulties to deal with, a lot of challenges, a lot of chaos. They may not even be working as a team. How often does that happen? And our role as team coaches is to bring that together. And it takes courage to perhaps really support the team in pinpointing where some of their issues are that are not being confronted. And then, of course, we want to encourage cooperation. We need to have that mindset of cooperation in terms of we're in this together, not to say that we're controlling what the team does, of course. We're helping the team, we're coaching the team to get to where they want to be. But there is that cooperation between all of us. And that's quite difficult sometimes, isn't it? Not to be drawn into the team's narrative and become part of the team. We want cooperation, but that doesn't mean total involvement in being part of the team. We need to keep ourselves out. And commitment to getting some results, helping the team to get results. So you may choose your own values in place of these. These are just an example, but the whole idea of this part of the framework is to really think, what are my values? Do I really live them? Am I role modeling my values? And how are they supporting team development? So that's a quick snapshot of embodied values mindset. And then we can move on to self-intelligence. I've got a question. Zachariah.
Hi, thank you for your time today. Appreciate being part of this session. Thank you for having me. I had a quick question. It might be me, I'm being a bit unclear about the actual structure of those three words put together: embodied, value, and mindset. So I understand the values. What you described seem to be the values. Why do you have the word embodied there and then the mindset with it as well? So it's quite an interesting mix.
What a lovely question. So I'm sure Craig will have an idea on this as well, but where I'm coming from with this is that knowing our values is one thing, isn't it? If we do indeed really think about them, feel them, notice them, have kind of some evidence for ourselves of why these are our values. We may have some very similar ones, but we will all have some values that are very important to us and drive our behavior. This is where the mindset comes in terms of how do we use our values? What do our values actually mean? Are they just a word on a set of values that we might put up on our website? Or do we really understand the meaning of those values and how they help us to behave, make decisions? That's our mindset. Embodied is we actually take them into ourselves and feel them and live them. They're our lived values in our everyday life and in our work. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I think because I started my coaching journey by doing Gestalt, and we talked about the use of self, and it has a different meaning. That's why I got a little bit maybe confused. I understand what you mean. Effectively, what you're saying in plain English: live your values through your coaching.
Sure.
Bring your values to the coaching.
Yeah, that's an
I'll give you an example. One of my value is I don't tolerate waste. If I'm in the office, I walk into the kitchen and somebody is using 10 gallons of water to wash a teacup, I have to walk away because otherwise I will say something that may not be well received. So it's visceral. I can't. So if it's your real value, you can't help not being embodied, and you can't help not being part of your mindset.
Indeed, and you make a great point there. And this is where supervision is so important, because if we find our values jarring, which often happens with people working in organizations, and they wonder why there's not a good fit, and it may happen for a team coach coming into working with the team, and it's recognizing that how we manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what one area is, are we a good fit for this team?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, hopefully we'll have done our pre-team coaching work with the team leader. Some of us might use a questionnaire to work with team members. Some of us might meet each team member. We have different ways of being, but how do we feel about our values fit? And about how it's a two-way thing here. We can choose whether we work with the team as well as the team wanting to work with us. So I think, thank you for raising that point. It's lovely to kind of question it and get a hold on what it means to us individually. As I mentioned, the values that I'm putting up there are just an example of some that I've put in there to illustrate what embodied values mindset means in this framework. And it's lovely to have it, challenged and talked about and see it from different perspectives. So thank you. Okay.
Well,
So,
and just to add just a little bit, just to say that, like, these, how do we say, these are the foundational sort of cycle of skills that we see that, that create this way of being that enables us to use ourselves more skillfully in the conversation. So this idea of being aware of embodying our values, not necessarily drivers, but values, and being able to connect to those meaningfully and intentionally and have a dialogue with them in the midst of the session. So if we're jarred by a value, that's okay. It happens in the room. At the same time, we might have other values that we could call on in that moment, bring into our attention, that might actually lead us to do something other than that. So that's this idea of understanding and knowing our values as a foundation to that way of being. So, if you look at this as a spiral, it's layering and layering and layering, right? It's growing as we mature. But let's keep going, Lise, or we're not going to get a chance for any kind of dialogue between these wonderful coaches.
okay. So thank you, Craig. So moving on to self-intelligence. How well do we know ourselves? And how well do we care for ourselves so that we bring of our best into the team coaching scenario? So what do we know about our well-being? Do we really take care of ourselves? I think we're great at working with our clients on well-being. How do we look after ourselves in terms of showing up healthy, well, role modeling what well-being looks like? And of course, if we're healthy in that way, then that will help us to manage some of the resilience that we definitely need as team coaches to be able to bounce back from some of the challenges, from what's going on in the team, from some of the dysfunction that might be in the team. So how do we manage ourselves, that self-management, in terms of how resilient we are? I've heard the phrase anti-fragility around. That's kind of saying that, we get so used to being resilient that we kind of welcome it, bring it on, it's part of where we are. And we get that kind of sense of knowing how to manage things and almost anticipate them, which is that anti-fragility part. And resourceful. How resourceful are we? How much energy do we have? How well do we look after our energy? How do we use our energy? Are we using it effectively? Are we resourceful in our abilities to work with some of the challenges that arise in team coaching? And that adaptability, we might be going down a certain avenue, and then something changes, something comes in from the system. And do we recognize that? Is it affecting how the team is working, how the team is being? How adaptable can we be? Or do we hang on to some of our favorite models that we feel we must use in team coaching because we know them so well? But actually, they may not necessarily be that helpful. And then we've got this social intelligence. You'll be familiar with these. Social intelligence plus emotional intelligence equals us working together. If we add those two up, that helps to bring the two together in that resource. So, relational awareness. Clearly, I mean, I've become more and more, clearly I say, I've become more and more invested and immersed in relational work, how important the quality of relationships is in how effective the work is. You seem to be able to get so much deeper, so much wider, so much more fulfilling in terms of being able to get into the real issues that are around if we have relational awareness and create that psychological safety that's so important. We don't have trust, do we, without that? And that intrapersonal awareness, you know, that self-talk that we might have thinking, I don't know how this is going to go down in our heads. Do we really want to go there? What is really happening now? All that chatter that is, you know, really difficult sometimes to be able to control, but we need to control it. Unless, yeah, it could be helpful. It's not always self-chat that tells us to go in a different direction or whatever, but it's managing that, you know, managing it, being aware it's there, and it will be there for all of us, including the team itself, because as humans, this is what happens. And then that interpersonal capability, how well are we interacting with everyone in the team? What's our capability there? What happens when we have some dissonance with team members or perhaps the team leader? Yeah, how well do we manage that? I know it's a big topic in my own supervision for team coaches, where people will bring those types of issues that or scenarios where they have problems with interacting in there, and we talk our way through, obviously in supervision, how we might overcome that. Flexibility is a huge one. Again, I think we found, Craig mentioned our training we just finished this week on team coach supervision. Flexibility is really emerged many times about how flexible practitioners can be in the moment. This has been about adaptable, flexible. And do you know what? It's about just being human. It's about recognizing that, you know, we've got some pretty great assets as a human being. We're born with them. Do we fully utilize them? Or have we become desensitized and we're in our cognitive part of our body too much? What are we using? We've got all these talents within us. This use of self that we're introducing today is to encourage us to really get into ourselves, really find out who we are and what that offers or how it gets in the way sometimes. And that's the work that we do. So this relational acuity that we are running through this at a bit of a pace because we want you to have a chance to talk about these. Reflection. We talk about this so much. And we know that's the way we learn. You know, things don't happen if we don't reflect. You know, Sharon's work in the moment and on our work is wonderful if we can do both of those, isn't it, at the same time? Can we multitask? That's a whole nother session to talk about that. We won't go into that today. Relational flow. It's noticing, are we flowing together? Is there movement in the right direction? Do we have some boundaries that we need to look at? Do we have some hurdles to overcome? The way that we find out about this flow is to use the skills we know about as seasoned coaches and mentors and supervisors, that deep level listening, really listening, not getting caught up in our self-talk, about what's happening next, about what's going on, but really being totally present and comfortable with being in the moment, and comfortable that what will emerge, and we need to notice that and being visually alert. What's going on between the team members? What are we noticing? And that adaptive systemic thinking, what is changing all the time, and are we adapting to that? Are we cognizant of it? Are we moving with it? Which takes us on to that systemic relational intelligence, kind of bringing that part together, where we hold that kaleidoscope of the ever-changing view of our work with teams. Always remembering the stakeholders that are out there, who else is involved in the system, bringing them into the conversation where it's relevant, noticing the ones that are being left out, the shifting landscapes that we get because of the changes in systems. We know if one thing happens in one system, it automatically knocks onto the rest, and that's why we have this adaptive systemic thinking. So that shift in landscapes, things are always moving. Something happens in one person in the team, it will move on to the whole for the whole team effect, whether we notice it or not. So the idea is we use all of this knowledge that we gain from the system and from our observations and everything else we take in to enhance the relationships within the team, to encourage the team to enhance their relationships, to help them see it's their work to do. Calling out some of maybe the behaviors that we see, that takes going back to the courage. That's something we can support with, not getting involved with it, not solving it. Our job is to push it back into the team for them to solve. And then that systemic harvesting, let those things come in, let them emerge and bring into our system when we're working, encourage it, open ourselves, embrace it, and just take in whatever comes in and how can we use it as a resource. So that's a very quick jump through. Yes, Georgia, nice to see you.
Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Well, I just want to comment on the fact that the design is a circle that goes, there's the arrow. And I'm wondering what is the meaning of the arrow in the direction, because I think many times we have cross lines, between the embodied values and the systemic relational intelligence and self-intelligence and, relational awareness. So I'm a bit concerned about the circle and the arrow.
Yeah, don't be concerned, Georgia, but I do take on board your point, because I was thinking as you were saying it, it does kind of give you that sense of you start here and you work your way around, which I've just done. I've only just done it for the ability to share the constituent parts with you, but of course it's cross-directional, and it's multi-directional.
Yeah.
And I think we need to change it. Thank you.
Well, it's the way we taught it, right? We started with self, and then we moved into the relational aspects, and then we moved into system. So we taught it in three parts, or we work through it in three parts. It begins with us, individual pieces, and then we work with the relational pieces, and then we work with the systemic relational intelligence. It's sort of it doesn't have to be that way, but that tends to be the way that people can make sense of use of self.
This is true what Craig is saying, and it does fit into that. But I also do think it would be useful to have another slide at the end, Craig, where we show the multi-directional. So yes, we do it in 3 modules. You're absolutely right to point that out. But of course, we can come in at any stage. And maybe the way to do it is to mention it at the beginning, but at the end, yeah? Thank you. So back to you, Craig. Thank you, Georgia. Lovely question.
Super. So what we see with this is that the concept of use of self is often taught in just the way of how we are interjecting ourselves, using what's happening with us within an individual coaching, a supervision, or a team coaching environment. Right? So sometimes it's taught as, do I interject? Do I use my own perspectives? What do I do with the wisdom or knowledge I have, models, ideas? How does that work? In the team coaching practice, very often coaches are either overusing themselves and becoming de facto team members, facilitators, leaders. They have the pen in their hand. They're taking charge. They're taking on a role for themselves where they feel more comfortable, especially if they're uncomfortable with what's happening in the room. So that's one way that we think of it. And then also this idea of how can we use ourselves more skillfully beyond that individual piece, beyond our own thinking. How can we, and what we work with, this idea of that maturity and wisdom and a well-developed way of being, taking in these considerations, creates the platform for us to use ourselves most skillfully in service of the team, in service of the stakeholders of the team, in service of the people that benefit from the work of that team, all in a whole, right? So and this is a way for us to begin to see that it's a much larger view than just what I'm feeling in the moment or what I'm thinking in the moment, but we're actually able to create much more value the more we attend to these kinds of areas. And very often in supervision, we're working with team coaches who are finding that they're using themselves in probably more controlling ways, or ways to make themselves feel comfortable, ways over helping, taking on. Just yesterday, I was with a group of team coaches in Korea online, and the team coach that was sort of main body of work we were working with in the session realized that he'd taken on everything for the team. He had just grabbed everything, and he wasn't trusting the team at all. He wasn't using their resources at all. He hadn't done it yet, but it was his plan. And in supervision, as he shared his case, we were able to just explore. And then he just jumped on and said, actually, I know what I need to do. Here's what I've done. I've taken all this on. And that's a use of self, less helpful in the team coaching context than other uses of self, which can come from all of these fields, we would say. So what we would love you to do with that basis is to take a moment right now. So what we want you to do is reflect. Now, supervision is all about reflecting on our practice. So what we'd love to do is give you just about a short time. We'll do 2 minutes for you just to jot down, make notes, do however you do it. Use a thing, just reflect on your own team coaching practice. Think of a team that you've worked with recently, a specific case, can be better or in general if you choose, and answer this question: how might the teams you work with benefit from you becoming more skillful with your use of self? So we're not asking you to reflect on what you might do. You can talk about that in a minute, but really, what might the benefit be to the team if you could become even more skillful in the way that you use self? So we'll just give you 2 minutes just to write this down, um, and reflect, uh, and just jot down what your own thoughts are, and then we'll do something with that in a moment. And thanks for your comment, Lisa. Will, it's a great one, and we'll talk about it after. But take a couple of minutes just to reflect, and then we'll work with what you come up with. All right, so that is 2 minutes of reflection. And now what we want you to do is we're going to put you into some breakout rooms for 10 minutes in groups of 3. And we're going to have you discussed, based on your reflection, what's your answer to that question? And logically, you'll probably jump to this idea, how might I do that? We'd love for you to, first of all, explore the idea of the benefit to the end user, the team itself, before you jump to action, because it's that benefit equation that is really powerful. So Egle will help us with breakout rooms. I believe you've been assigned, so we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Yeah, there's some themes there and some amazing perspectives. There's a lot about this idea of role modeling, and it is a big part of use of self, right? And this is where it's sometimes intentionally uncomfortable for us to step into some use of self, particularly when we're challenging the team in some way, or there's something that's coming up for us that may create some dissonance against maybe the team's narrative. So yeah, beautiful. And I love the way some stuff has come out here. And Lise, feel free to scroll through and comment on what you want, and then we'll invite some others to consider it. Is yeah, there is probably more benefit in use of self in team coaching than there is in a use of model or a use of a process.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I love team coaching is it's so incredibly challenging, but it's also the space where we can use so much of ourselves. Like all of us is required in order for us to be skillful and connected and able to create value. So I love the way, some thoughts about how this is, almost counterintuitive, how use of self, a number of you have said this, enhances team ownership, team awareness, team ability. Very, very, very powerful. And imagining that. So, Lise, what are you noticing?
Yeah, what I'm noticing continues with that, Craig. What I'm noticing in the chat is that there are comments about calling out our own emotion, sharing our own emotion that we're feeling, what's going on for us right now, and see how that lands with the team. And of course, that's a risk at times, but however, it's a way of inviting a response to a parallel process that may be going on somewhere in the system. But there's also a comment here about the risk of us eliciting, not eliciting, of us demonstrating and sharing what we're feeling, that might provoke emotion in the team. I guess my sense of that is, well, yeah, that is what happens. If we don't share it, then are we denying the team the possibility of recognizing what's going on for them, and maybe causing some disruption in their team as affecting their way of being, their ability to move forward as a team? And if we do cause disruption in a team, wow, what a resource. Let's work with it. Yes, oh, I'm noticing that's not gone down very well. So let's kind of, as you can probably tell, I do like a bit of humor. I think humor overcomes a lot. I'm not saying to kind of tell jokes or anything. I don't mean that kind of humor. I mean to just kind of hold the mirror up to ourselves and say, what is going on? This is all a bit crazy. We all use our own vocabulary. And I take on board the cultural aspect that you mentioned, Jelza. I think that's really, really pertinent to what we're talking about. And we can never think we're going to understand everything about every culture. I was saying in the break, I don't even understand my own culture. Within England, I'm English, and I don't even understand what's going on there. We hear about the North and South divide, and you think, really? Yes, really. You talk to me from different areas. So how can we possibly be cognizant of, or even aware of what's going on? However, we can feel it. Doesn't matter what culture we are. We are all human beings. We all have the same heart. We all have the same emotions, but they may not manifest in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's about accepting that and thinking, okay, so how can we articulate that in a way that's sense making and that helps us to move forward? Craig, I can see you're bursting there. Go on.
Well, I just Larissa wants to share something as well, so she's put a bit in the chat,
Sorry,
but
Larissa, I didn't
happy
want to preempt you.
to jump on that as well. So welcome, Larissa. Please share your perspective.
Oh, just really quickly. Yeah, I think I kind of picked up in that last comment. Sometimes people are sharing, they're using their self, especially maybe if they're newer and they're using their self as instrument, they might be sharing nervousness or, things that are
Mm-hmm.
more their own than actually systemic. And that's where I think there's a fine line.
Yes.
That's just what I was picking up on that last comment of that. I would say, yeah, I would almost err on the side of using self as instrument, but who does it belong to, what you're sensing into, maybe?
Mm. Thanks, Larissa. And
Yeah.
Barry, who put his first comment in, had that idea of like appropriate, right? This is, that's why we started with the reflection on benefit to the team, because often it's benefit to us. Like I have a need to say this, or I have a need to feel this. And this is where we, those initial self pieces, self-regulation, self-emotional understanding. I'm triggered by this. Is this my stuff? Is this their stuff? Is it our stuff? Is it two people's stuff? Is it between the leader and them? Like again, and this is where that need for wisdom is so profound. How do we, again, like we say, it's there's this huge value in it, and then there's also this huge caution, but at the same time, in service of the team, can guide us, right? And someone put in a comment about internal supervision or internal coaching or internal team coaching and internal supervision. And our own biases can completely, that's where we have to be really careful that our own biases, our own values, our own ways of feeling, our own ways of sensing are our own ways. They're not the team's ways, nor are they individuals' ways. And they may be useful and they may not. So use of self is really so much about that cultivation of wisdom. Sebastian, please share what you're thinking about.
Thanks, Craig. And really what this bit of the conversation is bringing to mind for me is the real need, if we choose to work with presence and use of self, to be starting to unpick the assumptions and philosophical beliefs and experiences that influence the way we show up with teams and what we're noticing, because what we're noticing is being shaped by those assumptions and philosophical beliefs and experiences. So unless we're aware of those, I think to pick up on Larissa's point, we don't know whether it's our stuff or the team stuff or the system stuff. All we know is there's a sensation in Gestalt terms that we're noticing, and what do we do with it? And I think that is such an important piece of being able to work effectively use of self, because the metaphor I often comes to mind for me. When you're starting to work with use of self, it's a bit like standing at the edge of a cliff. You know there's something down there. You don't know what the landing is going to be like, but you've just got to take the jump if you're going to do it. That could be scary.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Sebastian, absolutely. And I want to take us back to the framework there, where one of the elements of use of self is curiosity. And we're not for 1 minute suggesting that if we're introducing something we're experiencing, that we're saying it's true for everybody else or everything that we're talking about. We're just putting it out there. It's a possibility that it resonates with what the issues are and supports where the team wants to go. We're not saying that we're right. I mean, that's the last thing we want to do, isn't it, in use of self? Because Who's to say that we are right? Of course, we're not all the time, but we may be. We may be picking up something in the system that helps to move the team forward.
Sorry, just jumping very quickly. I mean, I think that's absolutely right, Lisa. You know, we are offering something that we are noticed in service of the team members creating their own awareness around what that is.
Absolutely, Sebastian. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's at, the space of supervision, like you said, Sebastian, you jump off the cliff. That's where supervision comes in, right? We work with that team coach who either thinks they're going to jump off the cliff and we can help them reflect on how that might work, or they've done it and they may have interpreted it in lots of different ways. We've had team coaches who thought that it was a massive failure what they did. It wasn't at all. It just got really messy for a while. After use of self, they interpreted that as like wasn't smooth or whatever, which again is their own story, their own bias on their own experience. When actually, when we ask about the outcome for the team, they're very positive. But the outcome for them is, self-doubt or concern, or worry. So that's that beautiful space where we're supporting one another in our practices to help us be more skillful. And not only skillful in what, the anxiety before we do something, or the anxiety when we're doing it, or the story we're telling ourselves afterwards, or what we choose to never do again, or what we choose to do all the time because it worked once, which again is not skillful, mature team coaching.
I think it's risky to get too safe about ourselves as team coaches. I think this is what's coming through. It's kind of a continuous learning, isn't it, around going into these scenarios with a very open mind, a very open heart. Yeah, this is what we're about today, about use of self, a very open heart. It's not easy for anyone in that scenario. There aren't simple solutions sometimes. Sometimes there is no solution. It's best fit. I hate saying that phrase, but sometimes that's what we're working with.
Well, so then our next challenge to you is begin to think like, number one, like in that diagram of use of self, and maybe I'll put it up again. Simone has asked a question. Can I please make a couple of real examples of use of self in a team coaching scenario? Would that be helpful for people to have an example of that? I just don't want to share someone else's example, so let me just reflect on my recent practice with teams to come up with something, and not necessarily a supervisee's example. So I worked with a team in a country in Asia with a mixed leadership team in a merger and acquisition type of situation, and there was a lot going on with the team, right? So, and I won't go into the context as much as what, from a use of self perspective, happened. The team was not very aligned, was one of the main issues in regard to it. And we opted and agreed and contracted on a relational sort of exploration, a historical sort of exploration of the journey of the team and how they got to where they were as a means to create a conversation about the team and its current status. And as that conversation was going on, I felt two things that I experienced. One was a sense of a deep sort of cultural respect, and cultural dissonance, even within the Asian cultures represented, not even the European ones. So there was respect and dissonance. And then there was affection and mistrust were the words that came up for me. So the way I use self in that situation is they'd finished this thing and I said, and I asked them to give me their impressions of what was happening. And they'd sort of talked. And as they talked, these words just became more apparent in my mind. So again, I didn't impose them right away. I invited them to explore what are you learning from this experience? What are you learning about your relationships, the nature of your team? Invited them to have those conversations. And then I said, well, could I share what I'm noticing as I've zoomed out overview, and I shared those sort of dichotomies with them. And I was really careful not to judge one or the other. It wasn't more or less. And use of language is really important. As how I said, I just see, here's what's coming up for me. Here's the words that are sort of popping into my head. And I just want to share them with you. And then I use this word curious. I'm curious as to how that lands with you and if there's any value in it. So I shared those dichotomies as an example. And so benefit to the team was what happened was it changed the conversation. So they did kind of go into agree, disagree, a little of this, a little of that. I had surfaced some cultural issues in a way that was gentle, and enabled a bit of a conversation about those pieces. So what happened was they acknowledged their affection for each other, their care and their respect. So they acknowledged the positive side, and then also began to acknowledge the sort of opposite side of that as well. So what happened was the conversation became more open, and they began to align. Remember, I started with alignment around this sense of respect and care, and they started to see that as a key aspect of their leadership through the M&A, because they needed to be aligned very strongly. So that's an example. Is that helpful?
I think.
And if I look at that through the lens of use of self, sorry, I'll just, so I'm using relational systemic aware, what's happening in the systems of relationships. And I'm also looking at acuity, what's happening. I'm watching how people are nodding and listening when this person speaks, when that person speaks. What's the difference? Is there deference in the room? To what degree? I'm working through my own stuff about how I love harmony, and I don't like racial divisions. I don't like bullying from Western leaders in particular. So I have those issues. So I'm processing all that. But if you look at the time, this is like quite a long time, like maybe 3 hours of time that this is all happening. So there you go. That's an example.
I think from my perspective, if I were to choose something from a team coaching scenario, I would probably go along almost exactly the same lines as you, Craig. I think, this is where we're coming from all the time, with curiosity, with feeding back where we are with things, etc., etc. So I'd like to give, if I may, an answer for Janu. I hope I've pronounced that properly, around how can I guide a team member, especially someone in a position of authority, to arrive at an understanding on their own, so the insight feels like it came from them rather than from me. Sorry if this question is a bit far-fetched. No, it isn't. This happens so often, where you will get a client who complains about the leader. It's the leader in the team who's the issue, rather than the team. And it's obviously it's a challenging one, but we often say it's not the individual that comes to coaching that necessarily will benefit the most from the coaching, but it's their line manager or the leader of the team, because they're the one that can be creating some of the disturbance within the team members. And I think that's where coaching the leader comes in. And a case that I'm working with at the moment as a supervisor for a team coach is where the leader isn't so much, well, it is a particular, it's gone up the chat a bit. Someone in a position of authority to arrive at their own understanding on their own. This is a coaching question, isn't it? This is what we do as coaches, is to support our clients in finding their own solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And to work with the team leader is a brave thing sometimes, because they've probably sponsored the team coaching. Not necessarily, but they may well have done. And they're thinking all the issues lie with the team. Why don't they just get on? They know what the objectives are. They know what the purpose is, etc., etc. Why don't they just get on and deliver. And it's because the team leader is actually getting in the way or is not helping find the resources they need, etc., to be able to achieve. So it's about using coaching skills, as we'll, I guess everyone here will have those, in helping that person to, I'm not saying it always works, it's not the golden bullet, however, but that helps the team leader to gain some self-awareness, which they're probably aware of a lot of the time. This happens, and to just by those questioning, using those open questions, by reflecting back, by asking how do they think this has occurred, what's their participation in that, all the things that you will know, but obviously you have to work gently with a team leader because of the ego part, which may be fragile. So I'm probably saying all the obvious, but that's what I would say to you. Yeah, I know it's a coaching scenario rather than something else. I'm noticing, Zachariah, you have your hand up, so I'll come to you, considering the time we have left.
Does that mean that you expect me to say a lot and we've got 17 minutes and you expect me to fill it, or?
No, I don't expect you to fill it at all. What I'm saying
That
is,
was my attempt at
I'm
humor.
stopping talking to give you a chance to talk. That's what I'm meaning.
Okay, so I'll just we touched a little bit on this about leadership in our group, and we talked about it. And I think one of the things that we were saying was, I think there's a couple of people here that I remember from the OSC training, and the thing with systemic training is that, or at least OSC, professes that sometimes you can't coach the leader in isolation. You need to coach the system together. Because if you coach the leader by themselves, then they go back to the group and then it gets rejected. So you need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah,
the other thing that I would say, I think that's really, really what we need to be very aware of as coaches is we need to make sure that we hold the non-judgment. I see a lot of bashing happening around in social media as if everybody's an angel, and then when they get promoted, they become the devil. Well, the leaders, they were not leaders 4 years ago. So I think that we just need to help people understand that they have a different perspective, and sometimes there's information in there as well.
Yeah.
I couldn't fill in 9:30, but that's what I've got.
I absolutely take on board what you're saying, Zachariah, in terms of it's a bigger answer than we have time for today, and there's many perspectives and each case is individual. So absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
And we'd like to sort of use our last few minutes before Eglė wraps things up, just to invite you to reflect on where you might like to develop, or where can you develop as you maybe have been exposed to diverse opinions and a different vision for use of self, or a different perspective, perhaps. Again, ignore the arrow. Just where on that flow do you think, you could invest some reflective energy on developing yourself so that you can become more skillful in service of those outcomes that we've explored together. So we don't necessarily have time for everyone to share. If you want to throw something in the chat, please feel free to do that. If you have a desire to share something insightful, then please also do that. But that's our sort of closing reflection for you. What bits of this would you like to reflect on? Right. So our desire was to open you up to a topical type of group supervision where we explored this idea of use of self, which is another way to use supervision. And in this case, in the conversation, right in the middle of the room, when stuff is opening up, when things are happening around you. Stuff's coming up for you, stuff's coming up for them. You're looking at people, you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're in that situation. And this is just an invitation to look at it through that reflective developmental lens and see, what is it? Is there one particular area that you think I could do it? Thanks, Mag. Embodied values mindset, inviting that others do the same. Yeah. Could be a whole contracting thing that we do with teams in conversation that, I'm going to embody, here's my values, and I'm going to try to live these. What are your values, and how are you going to live those on the team? Wouldn't teams be wonderful places if we all lived our values in that context? Even had a dialogue about them. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Meg. Anyone else?
Yeah, lovely. Jan, yeah.
Thanks, Jean.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a beautiful way to think about it. Really nice. Love it.
Yeah. It is challenging, Larissa. No one said it was easy, that's for sure. But we just love going into the lion's den and just seeing where it takes us.
Well, and we all know that if we haven't taken care of ourselves, we're more reactive, we're more easily triggered, have less of a filter, we're less able to be our best self. So, there is that really practical part of how do we prepare ourselves to be at our best when we're in that highly difficult and powerfully challenging team coaching scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you, Alessandra, about co-coach. We recommend that all the time. It's really difficult. I just been working with a team coach who decided to work on their own, and they realized it was just too much.
Yeah.
They just couldn't cope with, and this is a very effective coach we're talking about here, just couldn't cope with the amount of information and what was going on with the team, and felt they could give us their best. But the coach wanted to try it, they did it, and they said, I won't do it again, for that person. So, but we do
Well, and
accept
there's
as
another
well.
whole level to that. Sorry, Liz.
It's okay. Go on.
Yeah, I needed to interrupt you once. In the year. That another whole conversation about helping team coaches develop the ability to have conversations about their own different use of self perspectives in the session. So reflecting on a supervision session where one team coach was always using themselves and the other team coach was never allowed to use themselves. And if they did use themselves, the other team coach would tell them it was wrong, that they missensed it. So what a massive dynamic that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mag, maybe you share, and then we'll hand things over to Egle and give you our thanks.
I was just wondering, how fun is it to supervise, say, the two co-coaches together? Like that's a whole.
That's a whole new conversation.
Awesome.
It is awesome.
Can't wait.
It is wonderful. Yeah, for sure. It is actually, beautiful, very powerful to be able to do that with the team coaching pair, and very insightful, and helping them again to have the conversations they need to have to be more skillful.
And also, one team coach comes without their co-coach. That also is a fascinating scenario. So anyway, we could go on, obviously. We need to hand back to you, Egle. Thank you, everyone. It's been lovely to have you here and your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us the time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the richness of the conversation today, Craig, Liz, and all who participated. From my own perspective, my own developmental edge, which I'm taking for me, is more the courage. And the quote, Liz, which really resonated with me, you said, it's too risky to be too safe as a team coach. Really just wanted to underscore that. So thank you very much for this session today. And before we close, I wanted to share a couple of things. So I'm really excited that based on positive feedback, which we heard from you, we will continue with Team Coaching Supervision Lab as we run into 2026. And we decided with Liz and Craig that it's going to be a 12-month program, which is designed specifically for team coaching practitioners who want to deepen practice, their confidence working with complex team systems, and do it in a little bit smaller but very diverse peer groups, coming from different schools, from different accreditation paths, which hopefully will broaden the perspective. So as you can see on the slide, in 2026, we will offer a program which will be similar kind of format, Team Coaching Supervision Lab. And you can register the interest to participate in that program here. I just pinged in the chat the link, and you can see the QR code on the screen. So hopefully, if it resonates, just express your interest, and we'll follow up with you with the next steps. And in the last few minutes, I would like to very briefly share the preview what's coming next in the Team Coaching Circle zone. So we'll be closing year strong. We'll have 3 sessions coming in December. So our next session, just in a few days on Monday, will feature Lucy Videoson and Paul Barber, who will share practical insights on how to work with teams effectively and kind of exploration of working with group dynamics. In December, mid-December, we'll regroup again with Liz and Craig, and we'll close Team Coaching Supervision Lab with a focus on endings. And on the 15th of December, we'll again regroup with Fabio and Andrea, who will guide us through the reflection on the wider organizational impact of team coaching. So that brings us to the close. Wanted to thank you once again for the engagement. Liz, Craig, for your guidance today. From practicalities perspective, you can see where you can claim ICF CCE units too, and wishing you lovely closure of the week and great weekend ahead, all of you. Thank you.